Okay, are we ready to go? Every single meeting starts on time and ends on time. And part of fulfilling that promise is starting on time. So it's 8 o'clock. Should we get going, Wes? Can I persuade Michael Gardner to take a seat? He's being waylaid by Stuart Cole, unsurprisingly. More for those at home, there's more chatting going on here. We good? All right, everybody, welcome to the annual meeting of directors and trustees and the membership of Temple Emmanuel, as you all are referred to in the bylaws. So it is great to see everybody in person. And to those of you who are joining at home via Zoom, it's actually a lovely night here in 385 Ward Street, and you should strongly consider coming down to the tent and joining us here. We have plenty of chairs. Is there a barbecue, Jeff? Can we say there's a barbecue to get people to come? Okay, there's an amazing barbecue that's here. And we would love to welcome you in person to the temple. If not tonight, then as soon as possible, because we're all about building community in person here at Temple Emmanuel. So welcome to the annual meeting. I'm David Bunis. I'm the chair of the board. One of the last times I can say that. Tonight's my last annual meeting before I term off as a director in June. But as I always do, we're going to give a little overview of the agenda for the meeting, and then I'll turn the mic over to Wes, who will give us a devar. So an agenda has been distributed to everybody via Zoom in advance of the meeting. This is the welcome and meeting overview. Wes is going to do a devar. Tim will give his president's report. And then we have a couple of voting items. The first is presented by Bob Kahn, our VP of Finance, who's going to present the proposed budget. And under the bylaws, the budget needs to be approved by the board of directors, which it already has been, and then presented at the annual meeting, which Bob is going to do, and then we're going to take a vote of the membership. And then the next item is the election of officers, directors, and trustees. And Liz Brody-Gluck, representing our Nominating and Governance Committee, now known as the Leadership Development Committee, more on that later, will present the proposed slate of officers, directors, and trustees. And then we have a few thank yous to outgoing directors, and then we're going to finish with a big musical number. I'm looking at Eliza, a giant number. 3 giant musical numbers. Anyway, it's great to see everybody here. Welcome to the meeting, Rabbi Gardenswartz. That's a round of applause for Rabbi Gardenswartz.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everybody who's here, and good evening to our many friends who are watching online. The poet William Blake said that you can see the entire universe through a grain of sand. So I want to share with you 2 grains of sand with which you can see the universe of Temple Emmanuel in general and through this year. And as it happened, they both happened during this last weekend. One was, I was at shul on Shabbos morning, and I see a woman come who used to come all the time. She used to be here every Shabbos, and she hadn't been back since March of 20. It had been 2 years and 3 months since she was at Temple Emmanuel. And now you could see that she's got some struggles and she's using a cane, which she didn't used to do. I was so happy to see her. And I said to her, I'm going to sit over here because it's got some echo. And I said to her, wow, it's so good to see you and to see you for the first time. What brings you to Temple Emmanuel today? And she said, nothing was going to keep me away. I had to be here to thank Brian and David. I've been living off of the live stream for 2 years and 3 months. And I know that for so much of that time, they were here every morning and every night, every day, 7 days a week, no vacation, no day off. And they're doing that made it possible for me, home alone, to connect to our community. I just had to get here to thank them. And by the way, that whole moment when we dedicated the Beckman Levski Communication Center, there were all these people who had testimony of the same thing. I was saying Kaddish, and because of them, I could say Kaddish in my community. I had a yortzeit for my mother. I promised her I would never miss a yortzeit, and then the pandemic happened. Because of them, I could say Kaddish for the community. And there was just so much gratitude and love in the room. That's point one. Point two, this was amazing. It was also amazing. On Sunday, we had the end of year religious school celebration, and we had a tent. And it's so interesting because, there's so much anxiety about the Jewish future. There's so much anxiety about our children and education and religious school, and will our kids get it, and do they love it? And you had an entire tent full of children and parents and so much love. And I turned to the students, they're like 7. And I said to them, this is Maura Eileen's last year. And I'm just wondering, what do you love about Maura Eileen? And kid after kid raised their hand. And I haven't had a 7-year-old in my life for 20 years. Jordy's 27. So I forgot how 7-year-olds get stuff. They're super smart. They're super articulate. And they're very empowered to articulate crisply exactly what they think. And so 7-year-old after 7-year-old was saying, she believes in me. She believes in me, and that makes me want to believe in myself. They said, when I make mistakes, she's patient and forgiving, and that makes me want to do better next time. I was the new kid. I didn't know anybody. She made me feel like I was at home. These are 7 years old. And here's what I want to say about both grains of sand. This place is considered and called, as any faith community is, a house of the Lord. And the Lord part, where does that happen? Where do we find it? And the answer is in the space between people. So when that woman with a cane bestirred herself to get to shul for the first time in 2+ years to say, David and Brian, thank you, that's God existing in the space between people. And when all these 7-year-olds said, I love Maura Eileen, and we all felt a sense of gratitude and also hopefulness for the Jewish future, that's God in the space between people. Now, Hannah Berkowitz always says about Temple Emmanuel, it's an oasis of spirituality. She has a patent on that phrase. It's an oasis of spirituality. Tonight, we want to, first of all, thank you, our members, for putting the Lord in the house of the Lord, by being here and by creating beautiful relationships where God is found in the spaces between us, like Brian and David, like that woman, like Eileen, like those 7-year-olds, like their parents, like all of you who come. I want to thank the congregation for making this a congregation of God's presence. I want to thank tonight our lay leaders, because absolutely nothing happens in a shul that's any good, any shul, without great lay leadership. And one thing that rabbis know about, I know about, and I hear about all the time from other colleagues, are congregations that tank, synagogues that die because of bad lay leadership. And what we have, the most important thing we have at the synagogue is great lay leadership. And the great lay leadership keeps us going and keeps us strong. And just talk to any rabbi who's suffering in any synagogue that's flailing, and that's the difference. So we want to thank our lay leadership, particularly the lay leadership who is retiring or terming out after many years of dedicated service. And tonight, Bob is going to talk about the truth of Ein Kemach, Ein Torah. You can't have spirituality without resources. And he's going to talk about the budget that makes this oasis of spirituality possible and makes it possible to have a place like this where God is so deeply felt in the space between us.
Dr. Coa, Wes. Tim, you want to come up and do the president's report?
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here with all of you. If you ask me to describe this year so far, it's been defined by three adjectives: adaptive, resilient, and collaborative. Last summer, when we first started planning the high holidays, COVID cases were trending down, and we were planning on having our services in person right here at 385 Ward Street. Soon after, we started feeling confident about our plans. COVID cases started on the rise, and we soon knew that an all-in-person high holiday services was not going to be possible. Consulting with our amazing team of doctors, our ever-changing reality was confirmed. So what should we do? We came up with a two-way plan. First, either participate virtually or come be under a tent wearing a mask. We anticipated that there would be such demand for in-person services that we started looking off-site for a place that would be large enough to accommodate a tent. And we soon identified two places within walking distance. But then a miracle happened, which is we were now permitted to have in-person in the sanctuary services. So we had three options: virtually, in-person in the sanctuary, and outdoors under a tent. So what that allowed us to do is to pivot and have tents right here on our own grounds, which was a real game changer. Through the incredible collaboration between our staff, clergy, ushers, security team, our medical team, our tour readers, BEMA officers, and all the volunteers, including our chief high holiday volunteer, Lisa Hills, and the dynamic audiovisual team of David Beckman and Brian Lefsky. We were able to have a beautiful and personally meaningful high holidays with no known outbreaks of COVID. Thank you to everyone who went above and beyond to make that happen. Since the fall, we have been ever evolving from strictly online offerings in our living rooms to being here in person. Just like last summer, when we saw things getting better on the COVID front, then quickly change for the worst, we are currently in an upward trend. Our annual meeting that up until a few weeks ago was planned to be indoors and in person is now a hybrid event, with some of you here outdoors and many of us joining via Zoom. During this year, here is a sampling of some of the activities that we've brought back to in person inside the walls of our great building, as well as a few that were outdoors when warranted. Our nursery school, led by Andrea Shapiro, has returned with current enrollment up over our projected enrollment, and next year is going to be up over even this year. So things are heading in a great direction there. Our religious school in High 385 is back in person. Our religious school enrollment exceeded our budgeted number by at least 15 students. Shabbat Alive and Shabbat morning services are now offered in person. We had indoor Kiddush for a little while. I don't know where that stands right now, but we did have it for a short period of time, which I personally enjoyed. We had two new member events in the fall. We had stopped doing these new member events due to COVID, but we're able to host these events right here on the Bresniak patio. Our community Passover Seder, which was relatively recent, which we had stopped. And then shortly thereafter, we had a community Shabbat dinner, and Rabbi Robinson announced that Shabbat Alive was the first such dinner in 730 days. And on March 15th, 22, we had our first in-person board of directors meeting in about 2 years. Many of our staff also returned to 385 Ward at least a few days a week as we have been figuring out our new work arrangements. We brought back leadership education and development lead to the board, clergy, and some staff. This year, we read and learned from the book, Adam Grant's book, Think Again, which challenged us not to just assume that our gut reaction is correct and to take time and care to rethink our long-held beliefs. Thank you to Joanne Leno-Zelinsky and Michael Crystal for co-chairing lead. This year, we also had many accomplishments, including but not limited to, we had 2 studies completed giving us valuable information so we could run our shul. The first was an engineering study that took a very close look at our aging building to give us a realistic view of the maintenance we will need to do over the next several years and what the estimated costs are so we can better plan. An outside accounting firm took a look at our finance department and made recommendations on how we could make some process improvements. We put in a new paperless accounts payable system to help streamline the payment to our vendors. Our outside auditors completed their audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 by issuing an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the top possible opinion that can be issued. The board of directors universally voted in favor of adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism. A special thank you goes out to congregant Rob Likend, who helped educate the board on this extremely important initiative. Congregants Stan Jick and Steve Siegel led a committee that focused on looking at our endowment and making recommendations on how to best utilize the funds to benefit the shul. The Finance and Operations Committee took on many projects that benefited us. Thank you to co-chairs Bob Kahn and David Neumer for your leadership. And then former president and HR guru Mike Benjamin agreed to take on the large task of putting together a human resources program, including an entire HR handbook and a human resources guide of policies, procedures, and forms that all of our employees and supervisors can use to ensure that all are treated consistently and fairly. This was a huge win for Temple Emmanuel to get Mike on land for a few months to not only formulate the program, but also to give presentations to the staff to help implement the program. Thank you very much, Mike, for all that you've done to move this project forward. In conjunction with our focus on human resources, we now have a personnel working group, which will tackle various human resources issues and ensure that the HR manual and HR guide are both being properly followed and updated as needed. We have started a process of having a strategic plan for Temple Emmanuel. Our congregant Massimo Russo has helped explain the process of the strategic plan to the board, clergy, and staff, and we are now in the process of going through a proposal, and we will be meeting with consultants in the near future. And the consultant will be working collaboratively with the Strategic Planning Committee chaired by David Bunis and Sarah Conter. We are not aware of a previous strategic plan at Temple Emmanuel, so we're optimistic that this will be a tremendous step forward strategically and help guide us where we will focus our resources. Our timeline is to have the plan completed by the end of 2022. Our annual appeal has exceeded our budgeted amount, which is truly amazing, as we unfortunately lost our 2 largest gifts. This achievement is the product of hard work done by the annual appeal committee led by Chair Amy Klein and by the generosity of our congregation. Thank you all for making this year's annual appeal a success. This year was also marked by transition. In the fall, we welcomed Minyan Maor, which represented approximately half of the former Newton Center Minyan as members to Temple Emmanuel. Approximately 90 families joined Temple Emmanuel and instantly started having lay-led services outdoors. The rumor was that during the pandemic that many in the Newton Center Minyan held services outdoors, even in the middle of winter. Fortunately, the conditions were favorable enough to move their services indoors when they wanted. Welcome, Minion Orr, to your first annual meeting as members of Temple Emmanuel. We are so happy that you chose to join us. Also in the fall, I learned that our longtime religious school director, Eileen Beckman, was planning on retiring effective June 30th, 2022. Eileen has led our school with enthusiasm and excellence for several years. I would first like to say thank you to Eileen for all that you have done to make the religious school the top-notch supplementary Hebrew and religious school that it has become. Your hard work and dedication has benefited our children's religious education, so thank you very much. As a side note, please plan on being in shul on June 4th, when Eileen will be honored as part of Shabbat morning services. The news of Eileen's pending retirement set off a cascade of events, including forming a new search committee to try to identify Eileen's successor. Fortunately, Lisa Hills accepted my ask for her to be chair of the religious school search committee. Thank you, Lisa. Along with committee members Maddie Donoff, Joanne Kazarian, Sarah Conter, Samantha Levine-Nudell, Dina Snyder, and myself, we came together with the primary task of identifying and hiring the best possible person to run our beloved school. As you have probably heard, we achieved our goal, and I am pleased that Ilana Snapstaler has accepted our offer to become our next religious school director. As Lisa wrote, we hope you will join us in welcoming Ilana Snapstaler with tremendous confidence that she will be a highly effective religious school director, an integral member of our Temple Emmanuel leadership team, and a blessing to our community. Welcome, Ilana. We are also so happy that you will be leading our school going forward. Not long after learning about Eileen's retirement, I found out that adult and family educator Terry Schwartz Russell was also planning on either retirement or semi-retirement effective June 30th. Did I say something? Terry has been with TE for almost 2 decades and has set the bar very high for the programming that she brings to us. Fortunately, Terry offered to stay on part-time next year, which should allow us the time to figure out how we will fill this critical role when Terry decides to fully retire. Terry, thank you very much for all your dedication to Temple Emmanuel and your flexibility in staying with us part-time for now. This year, similarly to last year, will be marked by a large turnover on the board of directors, especially among the executive committee. A total of 10 board members will be leaving the board at June 30th. And of the 10, 6 are officers who currently sit on the executive committee. After the election of our new trustees, directors, and officers, there will be an agenda line item where the outgoing lay leaders will be thanked and recognized. So at that time, I would like to thank, until that time, I'd like to thank everyone for your volunteerism and for your commitment to making Temple Emmanuel a better place. We also have a very distinguished class of new trustees and directors joining their respective boards. I look forward to getting to know and working with you in the years to come. Thank you for making the commitment to making Temple Emmanuel a better place. As I reflect on my first year as president of Temple Emmanuel, I'd like to thank you for the confidence that you've placed in me. My goal is to move forward, think again, make Temple Emmanuel a better place for all. It is crystal clear that our success is driven by the excellent people that I have been surrounded by. The Board of Trustees, the Board of Directors, officers, our immediate past president, Maddie Donoff, our clergy, professional staff, and of course, our congregants. We together have learned how to be adaptive, resilient, and collaborative. Thank you. If you thought you heard enough of me, I have just one brief announcement. Sunday, June 11th is scheduled to be special membership Shabbat, which has been planned by the membership committee and clergy. It is an opportunity to encourage our members to come back to service our services, welcome new members, and honor the volunteers who regularly work to help welcome and engage both our existing and new members. Please invite your family and friends or come by yourself. We hope to see you in person on June 11th.
All right, Tim, just stay up here for a second. I can't thank all of our lay leaders enough, but especially Tim Mahoney in his first year as president does an outstanding job. Thanks, Tim. So one of the joys of being chair is I get to run a hybrid meeting every once in a while, which, as everybody knows, is the best kind of meeting, by which I mean the worst kind of meeting. No offense to you joining at home. Everybody here, it's comfortable. It's nice to be here in person. You all look reasonably warm. And for those of you who are at home watching on Zoom, there's an amazing barbecue going on right now. And I mean you, Rick. Okay. Just a few ground rules for the next two items on the agenda. We're going to be, the first item is Bob Kahn, who's going to be presenting the proposed budget for FY23. And under the bylaws, the members need to vote on the proposed budget. Now, how do you vote in a hybrid meeting? Well, we figured that out. You know, the framers of our bylaws have taught us. No, I'm kidding. We are interpreting the bylaws so that we count votes in person and on Zoom. And the way we're going to do that is if you're in the room, by which I mean in the tent, when I say all those in favor, you can raise your hands, and Jeff and the team are going to count hands. And same on Zoom. So if you're watching on Zoom and participating, please raise your hands. And Caitlin, you're going to count the hands. And then at one point or another, we'll declare victory and the votes having been counted. Fair enough? If you're in the room, I love a hybrid meeting. If you're in the room and you have a question, raise your hand. And if you are on Zoom, you can chat a question, and we are monitoring the chat, and we'll do our best to translate the questions that are coming in and present them to Bob in the first instance, or to Liz when she presents the slate. Fair enough? Everybody understand the ground rules? Now it's a pleasure to introduce Bob Kahn, who, as Tim said at the end, is one of the lay leaders who's going to be, can I say retiring? Fair enough. Maturing off the board. At the end of the evening, we'll have a chance to thank Bob, but nobody puts in more time and effort on behalf of the show than Bob Kahn. So can we please show our appreciation to our friend, Bob Kahn?
Thank you, David. Nice to see everyone tonight. First, we have an amendment to the budget. We're going to have a free blanket for anyone who showed up tonight. So I think that we have all in favor? Yeah, that one passed. All right. Well, it's great to see you. And so the scintillating part of the agenda are our numbers in our budget. We always like to start with some non-numbers, that being our mission statement, which is what the budget's all about. We have a budget in order to fulfill our mission statement. So we like to try to keep that in mind. And who's handling the slides? Thank you. Next slide, please. And you can skip right to the budget committee. A big shout out and thank you to the members of the budget committee. We met on a weekly basis for a couple of months, and a bunch of work was put in by all members of the committee. Special shout out to Dave Neumer, who spent an awful lot of time with me working on this. So thank you, budget committee. Okay, so the next slide. Our budget is divided into 11 parts. I don't know how the number 11 came up, but that's how it is. And it represents departments of our budget. So we have the religious school, High 385, nursery school, youth, family and adult education, holiday celebration, ritual, events and marketing, general administrative, house, miscellaneous. They all are what they sound like. Miscellaneous is largely the committees, the lay committees of the temple, and support for them, Israel Action Committee, Social Justice, and so on and so forth. Israel Trip is also in there as well. So let's get into some details. Next slide, please. So first, let's do a little review of our current year, fiscal year 2022. Our membership is at 1,423 member units. Dues this year, the revenue, we got pretty close to our budgeted number of $2.8 million. The high holiday seats were somewhat disappointing. Some members weren't paying, chose not to pay for virtual seats, so we came in $200,000 less than budgeted. We'll talk more about that later on. The annual appeal was a highlight. We raised an all-time high of $1.86 million. Overall, we came in with a slight deficit this year of $138,000, in part due because we have some capital needs, and I'll be talking about that later in the presentation as well. We had to set aside $250,000 for some major work on the synagogue, including the roof. Another bright note this year is that through the hard work of David Neumer and others, we applied for what's known as the Employee Retention Tax Credit, which was part of the pandemic relief that the federal government provided. And we have received $90,000 of that. We have a petition pending for another $600,000. We're told the IRS is very backed up, and so we're hoping that over time, additional funds will come in, and that will certainly help us get through, the difficulties of the pandemic and all the extra costs associated with that. Next slide, please. Of course, the pandemic has had an impact financially as well. We're maintaining a dual system, both in person and online, and we have substantial IT and personnel costs associated with staying online. As you know, we do religious services, adult education, youth activities. During a surge, we switch to online. When there's no surge, we have in-person or hybrid. And maintaining a dual system is expensive, but we feel that it's really necessary given the circumstances. And we are in a really good position at this point, having built up this IT capability. We can even have an annual meeting in a hybrid fashion. Who knew? Who could even think of that in years past? In order to do that, we have to have a very robust IT system, and we're maintaining that for all good reasons. Next slide, please. Reasons being that, of course, not only is it a solution to when the pandemic is raging, but it's come to be a convenience that our membership has expected. It's nice to be able to, although you're missing the barbecue, it's nice to be able to sit on your couch at home and hear the same presentation as if you were here. And the same applies to adult education and services and whatnot. And we have hundreds of members who will participate. Maybe our participation is even higher than before the pandemic for a lot of our programming because of the convenience of our online system. And of course, we're in a good position if, God forbid, the pandemic rears its ugly head in a worse way down the line. So next slide, please. So one of the changes in fiscal 23 is that we're changing to what we're calling unitary dues. We're not charging for high holiday seats anymore. So your dues will include high holiday seats equal to the number of members in your household. Those will just be part of your dues. There will be no separate charges for high holiday seats, except for those who, inviting a friend or relative, and they're not part of your household. We'll be charging $300 per seat for folks outside of your household. The dues will also be increased 6% this year. It's no secret we have inflation, and we have to keep up with the inflation, and our costs are increasing just like the rest of the world. Among the reasons, and we had thought about unitary dues in the past, and it really kind of focused this year after our high holiday seat revenues were a little bit disappointing. This seemed like the right time to switch to unitary dues. The high holiday seat revenues, we're not collecting funds to put on the high holiday services. That is a pretty limited expense. The revenues were just another way of defraying our year-round costs. So it's really kind of an artificial thing to have a separate charge for high holiday seats. So we've moved to this unitary system. Most synagogues apparently do have unitary dues. They don't charge separately for high holiday seats. So we're kind of joining what most of the synagogues are doing. Really more of a relational thing with the dues. You're part of a congregation. It's part of your membership. The high holiday seat charges felt kind of transactional, paying for your seat and that sort of thing. Another reason to get rid of that. And notwithstanding all of this, our dues are still comparable to the other, large synagogues in the area. And for folks who would have a difficult time with our dues, we still have a very liberal abatement policy, basically no questions asked, in order to accommodate anyone who wants to be a member of Temple Emmanuel. Next slide, please. Show you a little bit of the detail on this. The first row here shows the unitary dues for fiscal year 23. This for a couple would be $3,900. As indicated, there's no charge for high holiday seats, so the total all in is $3,900. If we had continued with our current system of separate charges, dues might look something like $3,150. A couple of seats would be $600, gets you to $3,750, which is pretty much the same as the unitary dues. And of course, people buy more than 2 seats. The same is true with the on the dues for single families. Next slide, please. So the big picture in terms of revenue sources for fiscal year 23, the biggest source is our dues, $3.85 million we've budgeted for the year. That compares to our current year, where dues revenue is $2.81 million. You see a significant increase to 23, largely having to do with we're not charging separately for the seats, so we're collecting all of our revenues essentially within the dues. Our annual appeal is budgeted at $1.7 million. That's less than what we actually collected this year, which is $1.86 million. We always budget less than our actual for the annual appeal to be conservative, just to make sure that we're on sound financial footing. High holiday seats we're only budgeting $75,000. That would be for the $300 per seat for folks who are purchasing tickets for people who aren't in their household. Next slide, please. And so in terms of our expenditures, these are the 3 main parts of our expenditures. There's the ritual expenditures, which is clergy. It's not just the clergy and all the support, the administrative support for the clergy and programming and so on and so forth. That's $1.9 million in fiscal year 23, just a little bit higher than 22. Our house, our facility, maintaining it, cleaning it, security, that's $1.14 million. It's actually slightly lower than for the current year, 2022. And it has to do with reducing some of our security. We took some of our outsourced security in-house. We also, it's not an actual reduction because we've reallocated security. So where there's security specific to the religious school, we put it with the religious school budget, and where it's specific to the preschool, we put it with the preschool budget, just so that we have a more precise budgeting process. But anyway, that's a big expenditure for us, the house, maintaining our facilities. And then general administration is our office folks and our IT system. And we spend a lot of money on software and website, et cetera. So that number is $1.18 million, and it's a bit higher than 2022. Next slide, please. So in terms of the totals for revenues, 2023, we're budgeted $7.5 million. That's up from $6.8 million. In part, that's driven by the capital expenses that I'll be talking about in a little bit more detail in a minute or two. The $7.5 million envisions taking a draw from our endowment. And on the expenditure side, we're looking at $7.5 million. And that includes set-asides for our building to do the capital work on our building necessary to maintain the building. Next slide, please. So highlights of our FY23 budget include the dues, which I've already mentioned, with a 6% increase and a change to a unitary system. We can continue to have the expense of running this dual system of in-person and online. The non-contractual staff this year will be entitled to up to a 5% increase in salary for fiscal year 23. That's up from 3% in the current year. Again, we're adjusting because of the inflation. Our budget is based on conservative revenue projections with the 3.85 million in dues. We also increased our budget for abatements by $190,000 to be conservative. As dues increase and folks face financial issues, we want to be in a position to be able to, as we said before, make sure that synagogue membership is available to anyone, regardless of ability to pay. And as I already mentioned, the $1.7 million for the annual appeal, which is slightly less than the actual current year collection, just to be conservative. And the good news is that for FY23, we are budgeting for a balanced budget. So next slide, please. So of course, we have the building, we have the clergy. These are all the foundation of our synagogue. And then there are items that we call, our investments, where we're putting money other than the foundational aspects of our synagogue. That would be our religious school on a net basis. In other words, after we collect tuition, we're expending $190,000 on the religious school, on youth programs, almost $190,000, family and adult education, around $120,000, which includes the $66,000 for our young family programs, the Next Gen program, which allows for those 36 years old and younger voluntary dues. And so that's an investment of $120,000 for us. And then we have our various members, groups, and committees. We spend $45,000 for that, and the preschool around $39,000. Next slide, please. So on the capital needs front, as Tim mentioned, we had a very rigorous engineering study done of the facility. They projected in incredible detail on a year-by-year basis all of the capital expenditures that we'll need to make in order to maintain our building going out 30 years. Over the next 10 years, they're projecting around $2.5 million of expense. So we're planning on around $250,000 each year. Over the past this year, in the prior fiscal year 21, we've spent around $640,000, largely replacing the roof, and also for work on the property that we own next to the synagogue, 10 Ashford Road. For the upcoming fiscal year 23, we're anticipating around $380,000 of capital expense, and that would be to replace a lot of the carpeting in the synagogue and also replacing chairs. As a result of the $640,000 expenditure that I mentioned, fiscal 21-22, our property fund will be depleted in fiscal year 22. And that's why going forward, we're going to be adding to it on an annual basis from the budget. And also, hopefully, we're going to be drawing from the endowment to fund the property fund from which we take the funds to keep the building in proper order. Our endowment is currently at $3,873,114 as of March 31st, 2022. And you can see by looking at the prior years that it continues to increase in value. Goes without saying, we haven't seen the numbers for April yet. And we may not be exactly $3,873,000, but it'll be a large number, no doubt. Next slide, please. On the annual appeal, can't emphasize that enough, and be thankful for folks who participate in that. It allows us to be assured for everyone, regardless of ability to pay. It's a vital form of non-dues support. We had 651 donors this year out of 1,335 members of fiscal year 22. That amounts to around half the membership and 100% of the board of directors. So in terms of our budget goals, in addition to our foundational, maintain the facility, maintain our wonderful clergy and programming, we invest in our programming for our youth in particular, young families and next gen, because they'll be our successors here in years to come. We invest in Jewish learning for everyone. We support our members committee with all of the important work that they do. We look to maintain a balanced budget and fund reserves for our capital needs and continue to maintain and improve the building. And we do our best to try to control the spending to keep us financially sound. In terms of our assets, in addition to the endowment, which I mentioned, the $3.87 million number, we also have what are called miscellaneous funds, $2,425,000 as of March 31st. And these are the various funds that members have set up over the years with specific purposes to support their interests, religious school, youth, et cetera, et cetera. So we draw on those funds on an annual basis to support our budget. We also have an operating reserve stabilization fund, which is almost $1.6 million. And that's basically our rainy day fund when we have needs for when we have expenses that can't be handled in the ordinary budget, we can draw on that. And this year it's important because of the capital needs that we've pulled some money for out of the operating reserve for that. We have our property fund, as I mentioned, as of March 31st, that was almost $260,000, but we're going to be spending that on various capital improvements through the end of this fiscal year. We have a Lifson Library Trust, which supports our library and programming related to the library. And finally, we have a reserve fund for furniture and fixtures, et cetera. And that's also very low. It's not ordinarily a large amount of money, but we'll look to replenish that as well in the year to come. So the words you've been waiting to hear, conclusion. We aim to invest in our future, build our reserves when possible, maintain our building, and continue to operate a thriving shul for all. And in true conclusion, thank you to everyone, the dedication of our clergy and staff, the generosity of our members, the time committed by our volunteers, the financial contributions, and the wonderful relationships we have here. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so we have no.
You want to take it from the top, Bob?
Yeah, let's do that one more time.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think the way we
Questions?
should we should have a motion to approve the budget, and then we'll ask for any questions or discussion. So do we have a motion? And a second. Now, are there any questions either in the room through the smoke of the barbecue, or for those who are at home? Caitlin, you're watching. We got question. Yeah, question. Hi. Michael.
Thank you, Bob. Just a question. Usually, or in the past in the membership, there's been a separate membership for people over a certain age. Is that still in the membership?
In the dues.
The dues, yes.
So, yes, historically, we've had a senior dues, and it over the years, it's not been very much of a discount, like a couple $100, and we just decided to do away with that. So it's just the same dues. And when you think about it, there's not necessarily a correlation between ability to pay and one's age. And so the committee decided and the board approved that we just have one set dues regardless of age.
Thanks.
Any other questions here? Caitlin or Liz, any questions online? Extremely effective. Thank you, Bob.
Whoa, best year ever. Thank you.
So we have to officially call for a vote. So a motion having been made and seconded, all those in favor of approving the proposed budget for FY23, raise your hands here and online. Thank you. Here, you can put your hands down, and online. Caitlin, you're going to give me a thumbs up? Thumbs up. Congratulations. The motion is carried and we have a new budget for FY23. Thank you, Bob, again, for leading our effort in the budget. And while we're saying thank you, I really want to express our thanks to Jeff Lurie and his team, Caitlin, Andrew, and Aaron, for making the outside possible and the Zoom meeting possible too. Thanks. Thanks very much. All right, the next item on our agenda is my good friend Liz Brody Gluck, who's been leading our leadership development effort, and Liz is going to present the proposed slate of officers, directors, and trustees. We have a slide that we're going to show for folks on Zoom, and in addition to that, we're handing out a paper copy of the slate. Liz?
Yes. Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone here and online. While they're passing them out, I just want to say that I am pleased and proud to present the slate of officers, directors, and trustees to you, the Temple Emmanuel membership. Before we get to voting, I want to just give you a very brief report on the process. This is now the Leadership Development Committee, formerly known as the Nominating Governance Committee. This is the process that we undertook to get to this point. As you may be aware, the committee was charged with nominating candidates in 3 buckets: elected officers, directors, and trustees. The elected officers include, per the bylaws, the president, the executive vice president, the treasurer, and the secretary. And each elected officer is elected for a 1-year term. The president is elected to serve 3 one-year terms for a total of 3 years, essentially a 3-year term for the president. The members of both the board of directors and the board of trustees serve for 3-year terms, and each of these board members can serve for up to 3 3-year terms for a total of 9 years. Once we understood what we had to accomplish, the committee then looked to the bylaws again to determine how many officers, directors, and trustees were needed. Then we undertook a process to develop a list of candidates for the open positions, and the bylaws direct the committee to consult with so-called key stakeholders at Temple Emmanuel. And the idea is we should have an eye toward ensuring an ongoing program for leadership training and development, always looking forward. We did just that, and we reached out to a pretty big, long list of stakeholders, including the clergy, the board of directors and trustees, the nursery school, the religious school, the brotherhood and sisterhood, as well as many other Temple Emmanuel community groups and leaders. And we did cast a wide net, reaching out to all these Temple Emmanuel groups. We had an excellent response. And in addition, you probably saw that we conducted a membership-wide reach out as well on the website. and on an email. So over the course of many meetings, beginning at the end of in the winter and early spring, the Leadership Development Committee thoughtfully discussed the candidates on the list. We continued to refer to our charge, the responsibility of Temple Emmanuel, and we're cognizant of the importance of the task, especially in light of all that we've been facing as a community over the past couple of years. We eventually finalized this wonderful slate of members who very much want to add value to Temple Emmanuel, beginning in July of this year. It's an excellent group of committed individuals selected from a larger, excellent pool of candidates. So we appreciate everyone's candidacy, and I hope you will approve the slate this evening. And you should feel confident that the names provided to you have been carefully and thoughtfully offered with a robust and professional process and the very best of intentions on behalf of Temple Emmanuel and its future. I just want to quickly thank the members of the 2022 Leadership Development Committee, David Bunis, Maddie Donoff, Sarah Kirsch, Tim Mahoney, Cheryl Kalis, Alan Zathmary, with great assistance from Jeff Lurie as well. We really appreciate all of your time and effort. The Board of Directors at a recent meeting has already approved the slate of trustees, directors, and officers in accordance with Temple Emmanuel bylaws. And in addition to that approval, the membership, you all now have the privilege and responsibility of voting on the slate. And you have it now. It was previously distributed to you, and you would now have it both online, access to it online and in person here. So I'm going to be calling for a number of votes this evening. First, we're going to vote on the officers presented, and then a vote on the new directors presented. Then we'll vote on the directors who will be renewing for their second and third terms, then on the new trustee candidates. And then finally, the membership will vote on the trustees who will be renewing for their second or third terms. So let's put up, please, the officer slide for the folks on Zoom. And for those of you in person, you have the copies. So first, turning to the officer candidates. Do I have a motion to approve these candidates to serve as elected officers at Temple Emmanuel beginning on July 1, 2022? I feel like an auctioneer. Yep, I have a motion. Do I have a second? A second. Okay, thank you. And now all members in person and on Zoom voting in favor of the motion to approve the elected officer candidates, please raise your hand signifying that you are in favor. Okay. Thank you here in person. Okay, thank you. That motion has been approved. Thank you very much. I should ask, though, for anyone opposed, because we had almost everyone here, but anyone opposed here or on Zoom, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to vote on the directors. Please put that slide up. Okay, you should know that these new directors, there are also directors who are not going to be on this slide. They're continuing in their roles. So we're not, those aren't listed on the slate at this time because they're not being voted on, but they're continuing their work on the board. So do I have a motion again, please, for to approve the new candidates for the board of directors beginning on July 1, 2022 for a term of 3 years? I have a motion, a second. Thank you. All members in favor of the motion to approve the director candidates, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, thank you. And all those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, the motion to approve the new director candidates passes. Thank you. Okay, please put up the slide with the directors whose terms are being renewed this year. Okay, again, I'm going to call for a motion to approve these renewing directors for the Board of Directors of Temple Emmanuel, again, beginning July 1, 2022 for another term of 3 years. A motion, please. Thank you. And a second. Thank you. All members in favor of the motion to approve the director candidates renewing their terms, please signify by raising your hands. Thank you. And all opposed, please. Okay, great. That motion to approve the renewing directors passes. Thank you. Okay, turning now to the Board of Trustees. Please put up that slide. Okay. Those of you who haven't had a chance to move to approve the new trustees, feel free now to please make a motion to approve these new trustee candidates for beginning July 1, 2022. Thank you. And a second. Thank you. All members in favor of the motion to approve the trustee candidates, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Okay, and all opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion to approve the new trustee candidates passes. Thank you very much. Finally, please show the slide with the 27 renewing trustees. Take a look at that one. And I need a motion again, please, to approve these renewing trustee candidates beginning on July 1, 2022. Thank you. And a second. Thank you. Okay, all members in favor of the motion to approve the renewing trustees, please signify by raising your hands. Okay, and all opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, that motion passes also. Thank you so very much. Thanks for voting on this very exciting slate.
Thank you. And stay up here for a second. Liz Brody Gluck led the effort on the Leadership Development Committee. She did a hell of a lot of work in the recruiting process, the vetting process, and making sure that we had a thorough and really professional process for getting this done. So we should all express our appreciation. Thank you. We're almost there. Tim, you want to come up? Is there any more corn on the cob, Howard? It's all gone. Corn's gone. For best ever. Yeah, there's beer. Okay, that's fine. We're at the final part of the agenda. I should say the penultimate part of the agenda before the singing adjournment. That's not in the bylaws. This is our opportunity. We've just welcomed some new lay leaders to their positions on the board. And now we have a chance to say goodbye to some folks who have put in a lot of years in service in the temple. So Tim, do you want to lead us?
Sure. Thank you, David. As was previously mentioned, we will be having a June Board of Directors meeting. So we'll have another opportunity to thank all these because everyone who's coming off happens to be a director or serving on the board. So alphabetically, we want to start, but David Bunis is the first alphabetically, but I'd like to take him last. So no offense, David.
I'll leave.
Okay, you can leave and you can come back. So Stuart Cole, I saw Stuart. There he is. All right. So Stuart, you're our wonderful past president who's been on the board and has been involved in temple leadership for, by your count, 20 years, which is amazing. And so I think you've deserved a little break. So 20 years. I mean, Stuart was really instrumental in my own development on the board and encouraging me to think about higher office at the temple. So thank you very much, Stuart. I have to thank you later. Maddie Donoff. There's Maddie. Yeah, sure. Yeah, why? Come on up, Maddie. We want to give you a mezuzah. But yeah, Stuart's was hand delivered, so he got a little bit better service.
You gotta come. You gotta work for yours.
So Maddie is our immediate past president. You've been so helpful to me and to all the committees that you've served on. Thank you so much for your insights and for your friendship. Thank you. Rob Finkel, come on up. Rob is our current secretary. Thank you for saying yes. I had to practically beg Rob to become secretary last. Oh, sorry. It's the truth. He was on the fence, but he enthusiastically agreed. So Rob, thank you so much for your many years of service and saying yes to being secretary. You've done a great job. Yeah, thank you. Debbie Ginsburg. I don't know if Debbie's here. Oh, Debbie, all right. Come on up, Debbie. Debbie serves multiple roles. Not only is she a great director, but Debbie is also the person to be in touch with if you want to sign up to be a Shabbat morning greeter.
We need as many people as possible, so please look for my email address.
So I understand, even though you won't be on the board next year, you'll continue in that role. Yeah. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for serving on the board. Yes. Leslie Gonzalez. Okay, Leslie must not be here, but Leslie has served as an officer and as a director while on the board. She's also very heavily involved currently with Hadassah. So Leslie, thank you very much for your years of service. Bob Kahn, come get your mezuzah. Our VP of Finance and Administration, who presented the budget this evening. Bob, thank you for everything you do to make Temple Emmanuel a better place. And Bob is an attorney by training, but now he's an honorary accountant. He has really, been great on the budget committee. And, when we say that he put in so much time, he's put in a lot of time, and he really knows the budget inside and out. So I'm glad to say that I believe you said that you might be willing to stay on the committee next year. So we need you, Bob. And so I know you're professionally, you're retired. So hopefully you'll be spending more time here on different committees, if not on the board. This is what happens when you retire. So Bob, thank you very much. Joanne Kazarian, she contacted me. Unfortunately, there was a death in her family. So we're sorry for her loss, but she has been fantastic. She's served in many different roles. She's our current VP of Education and Youth, and she's also my BEMA officer and Gabbai scheduler for Shabbat, which is extremely important. And that's a role that she's agreed to continue. So just because you're off the board doesn't mean that your commitment ends. So anyway, we wish the best to Joanne and her family during this difficult time. Merrill Miller. Okay. Merrill, thank you for your years of service and hard work. It's been great serving with you on the board, and we hope to see you around a lot. David Pemstein, I saw David. Come on up, please. So David is our treasurer, and he agreed at the last minute to take on. He thought he was off being treasurer last year, but then I caught him as he was waiting for a connection in an airport and said, "David, will you please be treasurer next year?" And he said yes. So thank you very much for being treasurer. It's a great service to the temple. And you've also been involved on all the finance committees and on the budget committee. And I know you're a big, you ride for Hand Mass Challenge. And so we thank you for everything that you do. So thank you, David, for your service. It's been great serving with you. And now we get to the last person on the list, which is David Bunis. And I don't really have anything to say. So Wes Garden Swartz, please.
Thank you, Tim. David, on behalf of a grateful congregation, I just wanted to say a deep, deep thank you. You have been a spectacular, transformative chair of our board for 10 years. That is a lot of Wednesday nights, and that is a lot of emails, and that is a lot of love. And I've been thinking about you And our friend and teacher Larry Bacow once observed that in universities, there are a lot of smart people, but wisdom is very rare and precious. And finding somebody who's deeply wise, you are deeply wise. And I want to just mention one word. You're the only person on planet Earth that has ever used this word to my knowledge. I've never heard anybody else use this word, but you have used this word all the time. It's kind of like the repeating leitmotif word that you use, and you use it in really helpful ways. Because if you think about Tim's presentation, at least 3 of the things that he talked about could have been hugely controversial, like how to do high holidays with optionality, 3 different sites for the first time in our history. That could be controversial. Minyan Maor is fabulous, wonderful, but it's a whole new community that has been proudly existent independently for since the 1970s. How to integrate a new community into our community. That could be, as Bob Kahn likes to say, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And then having to do a strategic plan that after the pandemic, how do we emerge? That could be a source of 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And in each case, you do the David Bunis word, which is socialize. We're going to socialize these issues, by which you mean that you really respect everybody who's here. You respect their thinking. You want their thinking, and you always take it nice and slow. And we're not going to rush, and you don't have to make a decision. We want you to think about it. We want you to get educated about it. We want to hear what you have to say about it. And as a result of the way that you brought all of these potentially challenging issues to be thought about, how you did it, we were able to be just so at peace in the presence of all this change, so at peace. And I thought that there's one kind of iconic moment that kind of takes in what you did for our shul. When your daughter, Justine and Jacob got married in Thanksgiving of the heart of the pandemic, really even before the vaccines came out, what you and Jacqueline did was in the Berkshires, you created a little oasis of spirituality. You had 14 people, brothers, sisters, uncles, cousins, grandparents, etc., immediate family. And for 10 days, everybody was just quarantined. And you created in the middle of this whole dangerous world, just beauty and meaning and joy. And that's what you have done at Temple Emmanuel for 10 years. In the middle of a world of tumult, you have created an oasis of spirituality because of how you led us. So on behalf of a grateful shul, deepest gratitude. Thank you. You're the best.
Can I get 2? Bob? Wes, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. It's been a great ride being chair of the board. I could say 10 years, but that would maybe technically violate some older version of the bylaws. We don't talk about it, but it's been just a great pleasure. I say a great ride. I've worked with 6 presidents, some of whom are here tonight, who have sort of showed me the ropes at Temple Emmanuel, and I've learned a lot about leadership and a lot about socializing and getting input and running a good meeting. And I also feel great about the board members that I've worked with, literally more than 100 lay leaders who have served on the board during my tenure as chair. It's been an honor serving with all of you. I'm really grateful for that. Professional staff, thank you guys so much for supporting us every meeting. It's really been really terrific. The clergy is just world class. You guys make this place run. This is like a round of applause here. We should really thank Dan and Elias and Eliza and Michelle and Wes. You guys make this place what it is. Really fantastic. And finally, I just want to thank my wife, Jacqueline, who's a newly elected member of the Board of Trustees tonight. And I certainly couldn't have done any of this without Jacqueline's love and support. So thank you at home. Thanks to all of you. It's been a great ride. Thanks so much. So now I think I'm supposed to say musical adjournment.
So we're going to end with 3 songs. 2 songs, right? One of the 2 songs. 1, 2, 3, 2. The first one, we're going to use the term that Wes just mentioned, which is to socialize, that David, we're going to socialize this moment together by singing Hine Matov in 2 different versions.
And we invite you to join us here. It has been a night of such goodness together, such blessing. Hine matovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matovu, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matovu, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. That's the whole of it. You can do it. Hine matovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Not whole again. Hine matov umanayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim, shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is. How good it is. How sweet it is. How sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is. How good it is. How sweet it is. How sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine matov umanayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim, shevet achim gam yachad. And amidst all of the goodness and the blessing that we celebrate together, there is also a broken world out there. And when we encounter our truly, deeply broken world, we meet it with the energy and the blessing and the commitment that comes from this place, from all the holy work that each of you do every single day, that emanates out into the world to make this world better together. We pray, we sing, we conclude our evening by committing to each other, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, we will build a world of chesed, a world of graciousness, a world of justice, a world of peace and blessing. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yalala, Yalala, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yalala, Yalala, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yalala, Yalala, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, I will build this world from love. And you must build this world from love. And we must build this world from love. Then God will build this world from love. Party. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. I will build this world from love.
We must build this world from love. And we will build this world from love. And God will build this world from love.
Olam chesed yibaneh. Yalalai, yalalai. Olam chesed yibaneh. Yalalai, yalalai. Laila Tov.